Hello, everybody. Welcome back to It's Called Football as we get ready to bring you a look ahead to Matchday 17 in the Premier League, set to kick off from Friday afternoon if you're in kind of North America and that part of the world, and Friday evening slash nighttime if you're in Europe where the Premier League is situated. Let's get right into our look ahead. We have one fixture on Friday as Nottingham Forest, who have been struggling for form a little bit, host Tottenham Hotspur, who may just be getting back into form. Forest, obviously, as we know, have had defeats against Everton recently and then destroyed against Fulham, but they did manage to pick up a vital draw away at Wolves last time out, which was rumored that it might have kept their manager in the job, which was pleasing news to all their fans who love Steve Cooper, the manager in charge of Nottingham Forest. Tottenham had been on their own run of poor form recently, where they had four matches in a row where they had scored the first goal to lead, and then proceeded to lose each of those four matches. Now, granted, some of those games came against tough opponents like Chelsea and Manchester City, but they also came against Aston Villa, who, yes, they've been tough, but you would expect a side of Tottenham's caliber to be able to see out a game after they take the lead in a game like that. And then it also happened against West Ham, but Tottenham did make amends last time out by winning 4-1 convincingly against Newcastle. So it will be an interesting match for sure. But you could argue Tottenham definitely have the upper hand, and on paper they have the stronger squad. But as we know, football isn't played on paper, so we'll have to wait and see what happens tomorrow. We then have Bournemouth on Saturday's first game taking on Luton Town, in a game which, if you'd asked me 2 months ago, I would have said would be a close one. But currently, the way Bournemouth are playing, you would almost bet your house on them winning that game quite comfortably. Um, they've been sensational, and they claimed Manchester United scalp last time in Matchday 16. So uh, they'll be going full of confidence into this game, and the fact that they're at home is just an added bonus for them. Luton have delivered really heroic attempts against Manchester City and Arsenal in the last two match days, but ultimately came away empty-handed from both. And so it seems like their confidence hasn't really been dented by the defeats they've had, and they are proving a tough nut to crack because there are very few sides that have beaten them by more than a single goal margin in the season or in the Premier League this season. We also see on Saturday Chelsea take on Sheffield United in a game that looks, despite form, it looks overwhelmingly in Chelsea's favour, and I would expect that they should probably win that game. But Sheffield United did get their second win of the season last time out, unexpectedly, it has to be said, against Brentford. So perhaps they come up with a shock of their own again. Manchester City also play Crystal Palace. Palace are not in good form. They threw away a lead at home last time against Liverpool in a game that would have been really helpful for them to get anything out of, and they ultimately didn't manage to. Now, yes, there was a little bit of dubious officiating, but hey, that's not a surprise anymore. It doesn't excuse it, but you would have to think that City are the favored side in this fixture. And then Newcastle play Fulham again, a fixture that if you'd asked me a month or two ago, I would have said this is easily predictable as Newcastle's win. But you could argue Fulham have been in better form than Newcastle of late, and Newcastle did just get knocked out of the Champions League, the European competition, in midweek. So that combined with the fact that Newcastle have a ton of injuries, and Fulham seem to have found out how to score lots of goals consistently, could result in a surprising match and a surprising flow of the game. Saturday then sees another game in Burnley versus Everton, which also has a little bit of significance as a rivalry, only down to a couple of individuals, and we'll get into that just a little later. but it will be an interesting game, excuse me. And then Sunday sees four games. We kick off with Arsenal against Brighton, which is going to be a real firecracker of a game, I think, based on recent history between the two sides and just the type of football that both teams and both managers like to play. Brentford versus Aston Villa also should be tough because Brentford is at home where they are generally very solid. Obviously, they have the crowd's backing, uh, and they generally set up well and they set up in a very organized way against other top sides, which Aston Villa is definitely proving to be this season. Villa have beaten Arsenal and Manchester City in successive fixtures over the last two match days, and conceded none in that time. So Villa are going to be going smelling blood and trying to go for another victory, this time on the road. But Brentford will be a side that's very, very tough to break down. West Ham versus Wolves is also on Sunday, which used to be quite an entertaining game with two teams that play open football, and it is still a little unpredictable. I think Wolves have played better this season than West Ham have, um, but Wolves have also been undone by some really awful refereeing decisions, which is why they sit below West Ham in the table. Um, Now, that being said, Wolves' best performances have probably come against some of the top sides in the league. So they know how to turn it on in those games and give a fight to the top sides. Will they be able to do the same against West Ham, who, with all due respect to them, aren't quite at the same elite table as perhaps your Liverpools, your Manchester Cities, Arsenals, and so on. It should still be a good game, I think, and a little tough to predict, but I think Wolves maybe just slightly have the edge in this one. And then we have the big one, Liverpool versus Manchester United, and there's a whole history behind this fixture, what it means, the historical significance, and the recent significance. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So a look ahead at the Premier League table after Matchday 16 finished last weekend. We have Liverpool leading the table for the first time this season by a point on Arsenal, and Arsenal lead by a point against Aston Villa, who are just slightly ahead of Manchester City. And then there's a little bit of a gap between them and Tottenham and Manchester United, and then it gets tight again towards the end of the top 10. Fulham, of course, have just broken into the top 10 as of last time because of their recent run of form and the fact that they're scoring goals in buckets. Um, Incredible, really, turnaround from them, and they could keep pushing on. There's really no reason that they couldn't. But it should make for some entertaining games, especially that Liverpool versus Manchester United game and Arsenal against Brighton. They're tough matches, especially because Liverpool and Arsenal both have teams breathing down their necks, and they know that if they slip up, they will likely lose their spot at the top of the table. The bottom half sees Brentford still just trying to kind of squeak their way and push into that top 10. They've been on the cusp of it for a few weeks now. Chelsea, who were sitting in the top 10 for a couple of weeks, have slipped back down now below Brentford. And like you said, Wolves, who have been the victims of some really poor officials' decisions, they're there and they could still make a push for the top 10 this week alone, but their goal difference kind of is setting them back a little bit compared to the teams directly above them. Bournemouth is another side who suffered early on and have been trying to dig themselves out of this hole in terms of goal difference, but they have had really good form in recent weeks. And who knows? I mean, you really wouldn't bet against them winning again, considering that they're facing Luton at the moment, and Bournemouth will be so high on confidence. There's a bit of a gap then to Crystal Palace, and then we see Nottingham Forest, Everton, who have broken out of the relegation zone after being in that bottom three for a while after the points deduction. Everton will definitely be looking to create even more distance and perhaps try and make some movement further up the table themselves. And the bottom three are kind of anchored where they are for now. Some of them might switch positions depending on results this weekend, but none of them can actually get out of the bottom three this match day because of the points gap between them and 17th placed Everton. But obviously, a win would go a long way towards then amping the pressure on the sides above them for future match days. So there are two featured matches that we would recommend, at least. Obviously, two is the minimum. It's kind of like stoppage time. Um, we think Arsenal versus Brighton will be a match worth tuning into if you're able to, just because of obviously Arsenal have a lot riding on it with regards to trying to get back to the top of the league table. Brighton are not far off from pushing into those European spots, and they will want to be doing that. Plus, recent history in this fixture suggests that Brighton actually can go in with confidence. More on that in a couple of minutes. And the big one, we think this one is absolutely unmissable. Liverpool versus Manchester United. In recent seasons, this has been emphatically a game that has gone Liverpool's way. Um, Manchester United, of course, have had some heartbreak midweek with going out of European competition, just like Newcastle. Um, Manchester United also finished bottom of their Champions League group, meaning that their European football journey has come to an end for this season. And that combined with their recent record away to Liverpool will be very concerning to United fans. So the big one that we wanted to kick off with is Liverpool versus Manchester United. Mohamed Salah is undoubtedly the star of Liverpool's attack and has been for a long time. But probably the biggest thing is his contributions against Manchester United. He constantly comes up with goals and assists against them. It doesn't matter whether he's been in form or out of form in the games leading up to it. This time he's absolutely in form. He keeps contributing goals and assists every game for Liverpool. Um, and last season he was instrumental in a 7-0 thrashing that Liverpool handed out to Manchester United in this game. It was abysmal by United on the day, and they haven't really looked much better than that. Manchester United, I mean, this season. They've been losing games that they perhaps shouldn't. They've just not been dominating games in a convincing way or in a consistent run of games. And and to kind of make matters worse, they potentially have two more defenders in Harry Maguire and Luke Shaw out with injury for this game after potentially sustaining minor injuries in their European game in midweek. Uh, all of and their captain Bruno Fernandes has been suspended for this game after picking up his fifth yellow card of the season in their previous match against Bournemouth. So there's a lot here that is uh, is playing right into Liverpool's hands, and I wouldn't blame Manchester United players, staff, fans, anybody really associated with the club to be very, very concerned going into this match. Uh, Liverpool at home are a deadly side, perhaps one of the deadliest that Europe has ever seen. And yeah, it could be another bloodbath if Manchester United don't turn up in the right mindset and with the right tactics for this game. Sean Dyche, manager of Everton, has some personal history going into this weekend's game because he used to be the manager of Burnley for a long time. He was the manager of Burnley and he was a specialist at the fact that whenever Burnley were in a fight at the bottom of the table, he somehow just knew how to get results at the right time to dig them out and to save them and to keep them up in the Premier League at the end of the season for a long time. Eventually, it happened once too often. He wasn't able to do it. He was sacked, found his way back into managing in the Premier League with Everton. And after that 10 points deduction, he seems to be working his magic again. Except this time, he has to do it at his old home, at Burnley, with Everton traveling away to Burnley. Um, I think the fans there will probably give him a warm reception given all he did for them. But obviously, he will. be simply focused on Everton. Given that Everton are close to that bottom three right now through no fault of their own, really, and he knows that a win could propel them up to as high as 16th or 15th in the table. Um, he is definitely going to there's not going to be any love lost there really on his part. I think he's going to simply focus, and nothing would give him more joy right now than to lead Everton to a fourth win in a row, which they look more than capable of doing at the moment, to be honest. Arsenal and Brighton, the reason that this game has a little bit of recent history is because in the last two seasons, Arsenal have hosted Brighton close to the end of the season when something was on the line. 2 seasons ago, Arsenal were pushing for fourth place, which would have taken them into the Champions League, the elite tier of European competition, and Brighton somehow came up and got a 2-1 win at Arsenal, effectively ending their hopes of sealing that fourth spot in the league. And then last season, when the league title was potentially up for grabs, Brighton rolled up again near the end of the season and won 3-0 at Arsenal. So there is, I don't think it's quite a mental block necessarily, but I think maybe the dynamic of the game might be a little different because the game isn't being played at the same stage of the season. Don't get me wrong, there's always a lot at stake at any point in the season, but Brighton haven't quite been exactly the same. And while they have scored and had their opponents score on them every game, I think this one will be a closer match. But obviously, Arsenal need to be going out there with a point to prove and taking absolutely nothing for granted. What will be a boost to Arsenal is that their manager, Mikel Arteta, he has been in a feud with the refereeing organization of the Premier League for about a month now, when Arsenal controversially lost at Newcastle due to officiating perhaps not being at the top of its game. He proceeded after that match to brand the officiating as a disgrace and said that he was embarrassed um, to be a part of a league that's claimed to be the best in the world and yet has officiating of such suboptimal standard constantly on display. Well, that his comments have been under investigation, and there was a strong possibility that he was going to be charged by the Football Association in England and potentially banned for either this game or next weekend. And today the results came out that he's actually been cleared of all those charges, which is huge news for Arsenal because it means Mikel Arteta is back on the touchline for them after he was unavailable through suspension against Aston Villa last week. And obviously the scare was there that he might be missing more games with further bans. But these are some of the points that came out after the verdict was made today that Mikel Arteta will face no further charges. The one which I kind of think is interesting is the first of these three, where the FA appear to be showing a bias suggesting that Arteta's status, meaning that he's the manager of one of the top clubs in the country, they suggest that his comments are worse because he made them, because of his status, because of his position relative to other managers in the league, which I think is biased at best, because there's no way that that should be the case. How would it be fair for one manager to claim that the officiating is a disgrace and be brought up potentially on charges for it, while managers of quote unquote lower sides or smaller sides uh, would face nothing of the sort and no such spotlight? Seems unfair, and I'm really glad that the independent commission, which handled this whole situation in this case, eventually dismissed that charge from the FA and decreed that no, his being a manager at a top club should not impact the severity of the comments. Now, don't get me wrong, I personally thought that Arteta was going to face some kind of a ban for his comments, but I'm quite delighted that, as a fan, that he hasn't faced anything like that because I think there have been a few instances already where the refereeing organization have appeared to show favoritism towards certain sides and the opposite towards certain sides as well. And perhaps it's just me with my Arsenal glasses on, but it has felt like Arsenal have been the victim of some poor decisions more than the beneficiaries of dubious ones. So it is nice to see that this situation was handled fairly and objectively, and it could be the boost that Arsenal need to get a result against Brighton this weekend. So, what do we think is going to happen in this match day of fixtures? Well, Forest versus Spurs, I think, is leaning towards Tottenham for sure. I know Forest are at home and they can be tough there, but they haven't really shown that in recent weeks. And I think Spurs might have just clicked a little back into gear. So I'm going for a 2-0 win to Tottenham in this game. Bournemouth, I think, are definitely the stronger of these two sides, and they 100% have more momentum about them. I think that they are going to win 2-0 as well. I know Luton haven't really lost by more than a goal very often this season, but I do think that the way Bournemouth are playing, the form they're in, the confidence they have, they are going to find this fairly routine, and I think it'll be more than just a one goal margin of victory. Every single match day, I feel like I'm estimating and predicting that Chelsea will finally click with the talent that they have in their squad. And it's rarely happening week to week. I I don't really know what to expect from them, but I do think Sheffield United have been far from impressive this season. And for that reason alone, I think that Chelsea will take advantage of that. Um, I think Chelsea will probably make some kind of a mistake that gives Sheffield United a goal because that's what Chelsea have been doing. But I think Sheffield United are more likely to just give away goals like that as well more often. Manchester City and Palace, I think City also have been a little suspect at giving away cheap goals this season more than they ever have in the recent past. And yet City are just Manchester City. They're dominant. They have so much attacking talent. And there's rumor that their striker, Erling Haaland, who missed their last match against Luton, apparently he is back. And if he's back, he's probably going to be fit, firing, and hungry for goals. So I'm going for a 4-1 win to Manchester City. Now, I said earlier that Newcastle and Fulham might be a tough one to predict because of the unstable form from Newcastle, and yet they have more talent in their squad, I would say. Fulham, however, have hit their rhythm a little bit better. Um, I think Newcastle at home is a different beast to Newcastle away, and at home, Newcastle just seem to get things over the line, in no small part because of their fans and how sensational they are. And I think that's what will propel this team and drag them over the line to a narrow 2-1 win. In terms of Burnley and Everton, I think it's going to be a happy homecoming for Sean Dyche. I think Everton are definitely in the better form. They've claimed the scalps of Newcastle and Chelsea in recent match days. And Burnley, while they did pick up a draw against Brighton last time, I think the momentum is very solidly with Everton here. And I'm going for a 2-0 win for them. Arsenal and Brighton is tough. And I think very much depends on how the key players for both sides turn up and whether they turn up delivering an 8 out of 10 performance or a 3 out of 10 performance. That is going to make or break the game for either side. I think with both teams having European games this week, it's possible that Arsenal, having played earlier, might have a little bit more of a rest and they might be able to take some advantage of that. But I think Brighton seem to have something here at Arsenal, and they just seem to know how to pull out a result. So I'm going for honours even in a 2-2 draw. Brentford and Villa. This one is tough because Brentford are so difficult at home, and Villa are difficult anywhere right now to play. I think Villa probably have more momentum. They will have sky high confidence with the wins they've had in their last two games. And I think that will see them over the line just enough for a 2-1 away win for Aston Villa. West Ham and Wolves again, I think is a tricky one. West Ham have probably had the better results recently, although they got smacked 5-0 by Fulham last time. Wolves haven't really been destroyed like that in any game, so to speak. And I think they generally do have the stronger side here. So I'm going to go with Wolves to edge this 2-0. I think they just have enough players to make that little bit of a difference to see out the game. And Liverpool versus Manchester United. I don't think, I mean, the thing is, it could be a repeat of the 7-0. It really could because Liverpool have so many of their best players available. Manchester United have so many of their best players unavailable or just not in form. Um, like I said earlier, if they don't set up right, this could be a worse mauling than last year. However, I think a large chunk of the league also knows that Manchester United at the moment are not performing to the level that they would want to be. And I think the league would want to keep it that way as much as possible. And I know Liverpool would be smart enough to do the same. I'm kind of envisioning 4-0 here to Liverpool. I think they will have a dominant win. It will be an easy win. But I also think they will step off the gas because I think if the performance is too terrible, then the Manchester United manager gets sacked and it's possible they get a replacement that actually inspires an upturn in their form. And that's not something that anybody else in the league will want, least of all United's rival Liverpool. So I think they will win it. They'll be confident about it, and but not quite enough to make it feel like a sackable offense. That's where we're going to leave you for today. The matches kick off from Friday and go all the way through to Sunday. So there's plenty of football to be enjoyed, and the weekend is coming. It's almost time for the Christmas break as well, if you're celebrating that. Hopefully, you're done all your shopping already for gifts for your loved ones. But if not, try to schedule your gift shopping around the match time so that you don't miss the action. We'll be back after the weekend with a recap of everything that takes place in Matchday 17. But in the meantime, take care, stay safe, and remember, it's called football.